during this wonderful season of Easter, in the springtime, it's wonderful to think about God's love for us. And it's true. And it's something I want to confirm. God loves us. But in our understanding of love, we use the phrase often, unconditional love. And we talk about that the way we're supposed to deal with our children or friends. You know, it should be unconditional. No, there's no conditions on it whatsoever. And that's most certainly true of God's love for us, that it is unconditional. Because that's indeed what and who God is, love. But we hear from Jesus today, and we've heard in other passages in gospel writings, messages from Jesus, what we're supposed to do. Like today, I give you a new commandment. Love one another. It sounds like it's a condition. Like God loves you if you love one another. And we hear something similar in the first reading today as well. Paul and Barnabas are traveling around to all these very difficult named places that Gwen did a great job in reading. And it says, Paul says, it is necessary for us to undergo many hardships to enter the kingdom of heaven. And how many times have we heard that message as well? Life is difficult. There's going to be struggle. We have to pick up our cross to follow him. And this idea of well, is love unconditional or not? Are there strings attached to our relationship with God, or is it completely free? And the answer is yes to both, in the idea that it is completely free. And a parent hopefully has unconditional love for their child, even when their child falls or fails. And God has unconditional love for each of us. And it is important for us to remember that God loves us, that God loves Hope Leo, clearly. And God loves murderers and thieves and rapists and beggars and any number of type of crimes and criminals you want to think of. Because that's what unconditional means, right? It doesn't matter who or what you are or what you've done, God loves you, because that's what God is. And that's all perfectly true. And in our humility, we need to remember that we're not loved more than the person we see on TV, than the person that was convicted of crimes and put away. That God doesn't love us more than them, because God's love is unconditional. But there is the condition that Jesus speaks about, because when he says, I give you a command, that means you've got to do something. And of course, that's the part that's up to us. We are loved. We have received that love, and everyone we know is loved by God, even the person you don't like at all. But if we are loved and we want to acknowledge and understand and experience that love, then we have to love others in return. You know, the big definition of sin is anything that separates us from God. And God, think of God trying to love us and us turning our backs to that love, ignoring it, and hating people that God loves. That's how we are divided. That's how we are separated from God when we fail to love others. Because the command is, you are loved, so now love others. And that's how we experience God's love. The person whose life is miserable, who faces sin and self-loathing, that person has very little opportunity to experience God's love, perhaps because they're not open to loving others in return. You know, it's, I don't want to sound philosophical and complicated about this, but unconditional love is how God loves us. And if we want to receive that love, we have to follow the condition and love others in return. So both are simultaneously true. It reminds me of the Ten Commandments, and Jesus is the most important commandment. Love God and love your neighbor. Because the Ten Commandments, the first three, are love the Lord your God alone and have no other idols. You don't use the Lord's name in vain, and practice the Sabbath. Those three things are about our relationship with God. And the other seven are our relationship with other people. Don't steal, don't cheat, don't lie, don't kill. That's how we do those first three, is by doing the last seven. That's what Jesus means when he says, the single most important commandment is love God and love your neighbor. And our response to God's love for us is to love our neighbor. The unconditional love of God is important to us because it reminds us that God loves our neighbor much better than we do. And the challenge is, how do we become more like God? How do we love our neighbor better than we do already? I think that's the challenge that Paul's talking about. We have to endure many difficulties. We have to pick up our cross. It's hard to love people that we don't like. And that's the condition. The condition is it's going to be really hard to accept God's love for us, because it's really hard to love others. But that's where we are, right there in the middle of the cross, in the Ten Commandments, right there in the middle of the most important commandment, to love God and neighbor. It's as Paul says, we have to endure hardships, but we know, as Christ tells us, that God loves us and always will, but our response is to love others.